welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Teresa. I created this channel to help raise awareness for addiction, as many of you may already know, as well as share my daughter's story of addiction, her battle, and her life, as well as loss and our family's life after loss. My beautiful daughter, Heidi. This is my daughter. Passed away on July 1st, 2018. These are her two beautiful children. Heidi was 4 months pregnant when she passed away, and she was a year into her recovery. I wanted to go into a little bit about her after she had my grandson. My daughter was extremely excited about having a boy. First she had her girl, and she was ecstatic. And then she finally had a chance to have her little boy, so she was blessed with both. However, a couple months after my grandson was born, my daughter started to use again and began spiraling out of control, going back to the same acquaintances, or as she would call them, friends, hanging out with them, and it just gradually got worse. She ended up meeting a guy who actually was amazing. She started dating him for quite a while, and she eventually moved in with him. Throughout her time of living with him, she continued to use heroin. And there were a couple times he had come home and found her passed out with needles next to her. And so he basically gave her the choice and the option. Either you clean up or you can't live here anymore. So she continued to tell him and I both that she wasn't using, but being her mother and seeing her go through this for a while now, I already knew what the signs were, and I knew that she was not sober. So she would pawn stuff to get money. Basically, she just got worse. You know, it was an everyday thing for her, and it didn't, nothing could stop her at this point, even though she was in love with this guy, and he was amazing to her and her children. Her addiction took hold of her. It was stronger than her strength. So she eventually moved back home with me. She lived with him probably about 5 months, I'm thinking. So she moved back home, and she just kept using. And it was kind of a back and forth cycle. She would be okay for a few days, and then she would go use. Or she needed girl time. She needed to get out. Can you watch the kids so I can go hang out with girls and do girl time? But her version of girl time was going and getting high. She didn't have that regular girl time with friends, except for a few that were good influences. But if she wasn't getting high on heroin, she was drinking. So she was replacing one for the other. She eventually met another guy who she was head over heels for, and he was deep into addiction as well. They were extremely toxic for one another, and their relationship was bad. If they were together, they were high. If they were breaking up, they were sober, fighting. And so it just got to the point where she didn't really come around much when she was with him, unless they were fighting and she needed a place to go. Of course, at this time, the kids were with me. And so me as her mother, I of course looked him up, you know, because I knew that I couldn't really expect or count on her to be fully honest with the people she was hanging out with. She was an adult, so she didn't really have to share the information, but when it came to my grandkids, I was pretty stern on her activities around them, or not allowing her to do those things around the children. And so I had researched him and found out that he had a violent background. And so I was extremely concerned about that. And so I talked to her about that. But she said, no, you know, it's a misunderstanding. Always is. It's not true. He's a good guy. You got to get to know him. You'll love him. He's amazing. And so, you know, of course, he was amazing to her. You know, that's who she wanted to be with. So, finally, I had met him a couple times. One time, she was staying with me, and he would come over and park outside at about 5 o'clock in the morning, which I just happened to find out through somebody else. And he would just hang around, and she would go run with him. And when she got involved with him, her children, let me back up, when she got involved with him and her addiction increased and got worse, her time with her children became less. And my thing was, I just wanted to protect the kids from that kind of life and what was out there. And so she was really good about leaving the kids with me and not fighting me. She loved them. She loved them with all of her being. But at that time, she loved her drug too. And she loved the addiction to the new boyfriend. And so she just, you know, they just got worse. And she ended up going and staying with him for a while. And then they would have a fight, and she would call me, and I would go get her. And then within 24 hours, she was back hanging out with him. And it was just an ongoing process. And I was really concerned about her with this one because of his background. It wasn't just drug charges, it was much deeper than that, and that made me uncomfortable. That worried me because they were violent charges. So there was a time where she called me because they had gotten to it, a physical altercation, and he supposedly had put his hands on her. So she called me and she called the police on him, which honestly I was shocked because of how strong-hearted she was for him and how devoted she was to him. So when we were outside waiting for the police, a detective came and he actually talked to my daughter, and he asked her if she would be willing to help them and kind of snitch on him, help catch him. The thing with that is he had a history with the city police, the city he lived in. The police department was right around the corner from him, and I found out a little while later that they were watching his home because of his activity and his behavior. And so this detective talked to my daughter and wanted her to basically set him up. And asked if she would be willing to work with them and help them because they wanted to put him away for a while. And I told her absolutely not, because that also meant that they would have kept her full of drugs. And I was trying to fight to get her sober. So this was only going to defeat what I was trying to do. and it was going to keep her in her addiction. She obviously chose not to because she thought she loved him and she didn't want to get him in trouble. And so nothing ever happened from that. They ended up getting back together. There was a restraining order, I believe, for a little bit, but then she got back with him, and again they just started living life like on the edge. One time they were driving and my daughter told me on the freeway and something happened. They swerved and got hit by a semi. By the grace of God, she survived that, he survived that, neither one of them were injured. I don't know how that happened, but I did verify, because at first I didn't believe her about the story, and I did verify that they were involved in an accident. Fast forward a little bit, my daughter and him ended up separating for a little bit, off and on, and during the last time that they were separated, she had gotten a call that he had overdosed and passed away. He was at his mom's house, living at his mom's house, and he had passed away from drugs, and his mother found him. My daughter called me because she knew that she could call me for anything and that she could talk to me about anything. She was so broken and so devastated. And I began worrying even more for her, because now she's not just an addict, but she was heartbroken and depressed. And I know that could have meant that she would give up on everything. She wouldn't fight for her sobriety. She would just give up on everything. And I was scared to death that that's what was going to happen to her. She never got over the loss of him. Her heart was never the same after that. She was broken. And I couldn't do anything to take her pain away. When your child is hurting emotionally and you can't fix them, that is the worst feeling. I'm going to go ahead and continue the rest of my daughter's story of addiction tomorrow. Please continue following me. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed. Share, like, so that others can hear the story, to help me raise awareness for addiction. Thank you all so much for joining me. Until tomorrow, be blessed.